Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The projector hummed softly in the dim-lit room, throwing grainy satellite images across the wall. Maps layered with red zones, dotted with threats, scribbled over with the confident hands of men who thought they already knew the outcome. A dozen voices overlapped, sharp and assured, yet none paused when her fingers tightened on the paper in front of her. She stayed quiet, not because she didn't see what they missed, but because she'd learned long ago what happened when she spoke too soon. The map in her hands, creased and smudged with pencil marks, carried something they hadn't noticed, something no one wanted to see. Her jaw clenched. She could hear her pulse over the chatter. Enemy activity along the northern ridge. One officer barked, stabbing a finger toward the screen. Two exposed. Another countered, adjusting his sleeves like the weight of command sat neatly on his shoulders. No one asked her. No one turned to the corner where she sat, hair tied back in regulation neatness, uniform still damp from the rain outside. And maybe that was the point. She wasn't supposed to be here, not really. A late addition, pulled in because her unit had rotated out and she'd stayed behind to recover from a knee injury. They'd handed her a chair as if it were charity, a token. But the map trembled in her hands, alive with truth they didn't want to believe. She traced the ridgelines with her thumb. The ink bled faintly where she'd pressed too hard with her notes. She saw it, clearer than the light flickering across the room. A trap. Her lips parted, but then she stopped, not yet. Because she remembered the last time she'd spoken up. The smirk of a major, the chuckle in the silence afterward. "Sit tight, Sergeant. The grown-ups are talking." She'd left that room burning with shame, only to watch their convoy hit an IED exactly where she'd warned them. 3 men dead. Their faces haunted her, not because she had been wrong, but because she hadn't been heard. And now the same arrogance danced in the air. Her fingers pressed harder into the map. No one was looking at her, no one cared. But what she carried was about to matter more than any of their noise. The rain hadn't stopped since dawn. Outside, puddles spread across the asphalt of the forward base, reflecting barbed wire and tired boots. The smell of diesel clung to everything. Inside the barracks, the buzz of generators was constant, like a second heartbeat under the skin. She folded the map carefully, tucking it under her arm as the briefing ended in a blur of chairs scraping, men standing, laughter cutting the heavy air. No one noticed she hadn't spoken. No one noticed the way her eyes lingered on the exit routes they'd chosen. She stepped into the rain, let it soak her collar, cold, sharp, real. It kept her awake. And then her chest tightened, a memory uninvited. Her brother's voice. "You always see the paths no one else does, like you're playing chess while they're playing checkers." That was years ago, before the deployment, before the silence in the family house after the folded flag was delivered. She had promised herself she would not let another family feel that silence. Not if she could help it. Later that night the base quieted. Boots scuffed in gravel, radios crackled, the distant sound of rotor blades faded into the hills. She sat alone in the dim barracks, map spread across her knees, pencil scratching faintly as she circled the truth again and again. Her bunkmate stirred. Corporal Davis, younger, barely 20. He'd been laughing all afternoon about home, his dog, his girlfriend, the truck he was fixing before deployment. His voice carried that raw brightness of someone who still thought this tour was an interruption, not a transformation. "You're always staring at that thing," he mumbled, rolling over. She didn't answer at first. The lines blurred in the low light, but her mind filled in the terrain. She saw the enemy's logic as if she had been standing in their shoes. "They'll wait," she whispered finally, more to herself than to him. "They'll let us believe the valley's clear. Then when the convoy's halfway through, boxed by ridges." Her voice trailed off. Davis propped himself on an elbow. "You telling command." She looked at him. Young face, hopeful eyes, unscarred by the weight of being ignored. "They wouldn't listen," she said softly. "Not from me." "Then why keep looking?" She folded the map, pressing the creases flat. "Because someone has to." He fell silent, but she could feel his gaze, restless, uncertain. She wondered if he believed her, or if he'd be another one to laugh when the sun rose. But sleep came in fragments, dreams of dust and echoes, then the alarm. Dawn. Engines roared to life across the compound. Convoys lined up, steel groaning, exhaust rising into the gray morning. Soldiers tightened straps, checked rifles, muttered half-awake curses. She stood at the edge, helmet tucked under her arm, watching. The major strode past, barking orders with confidence that felt brittle. She wanted to grab his sleeve, shout, throw the map in his face. Instead, she looked away. Not because she doubted herself, no, because doubt was all they had for her. Her hand brushed her pocket, the map folded there, warm from her body, a secret heartbeat against her leg. She would not let it die there. She stepped forward, boots sinking into mud. The first truck door slammed shut. Radios crackled with readiness codes. She climbed onto the third vehicle, sitting quietly beside Davis. His eyes met hers. He didn't smile this time. The convoy lurched forward. The road stretched ahead, narrow, flanked by ridges that rose like silent jaws. Her throat tightened. Every vibration of the engine felt like a countdown. The others laughed, swapped stories, chewed on energy bars. She stayed silent, staring at the map in her lap, tracing the lines with her thumb. And then movement. Small, distant, barely a shadow against the ridge. Her breath caught. She blinked hard. It was gone. But her chest burned with certainty. She knew. And yet, no one would listen. Not yet. She leaned close to Davis, whispering, "Tell me I'm not crazy. Look up there, ridge line. Do you see it?" He squinted through the glass, frowning. Then his lips parted, his body stiffened. "Shit." Her pulse spiked. But before either could speak, the convoy radio crackled. Laughter, casual voices, no urgency. She swallowed hard. Her hands trembled against the map. She had a choice. Stay silent again or break the silence, consequences be damned. Her chest rose. Her voice, steady but sharp, cut through the cabin. "Stop the convoy." Heads turned, a pause, confusion. "Sergeant, what the hell?" the driver snapped. "Stop the goddamn convoy." Her shout echoed louder than the engine. The truck jerked, brakes screeching. Voices erupted, curses, questions. And in that suspended moment, the valley held its breath. Then boom! The first explosion ripped the earth 2 trucks ahead. Dust, fire, metal twisting. Screams tore the air. The ambush had begun. But they weren't caught blind, not this time. Because she had spoken. Through the smoke, through the chaos, she clutched the map like a lifeline. Every eye that had dismissed her before, now, in the firelight of survival, they turned toward her. And for the first time they saw. The dust hadn't settled. Not from the explosion, not from the shouts tearing through the convoy, not from the panic clashing against the thin veil of training. She pressed her palm to the hot metal frame, lungs seared with smoke, ears ringing from the shockwave. Through the haze she saw Davis coughing, trying to drag a rifle up with trembling hands. The driver shouted into the radio, words broken and frantic. The map fluttered in her grip, edges burned by sparks. She pulled it close to her chest. For one suspended heartbeat, no one moved. The valley felt alive, shifting. She knew they were being watched, scoped from above, crosshairs hungry for weakness. Then came the second crack. Not an explosion, gunfire. Echoing sharp against stone, bullets rained. Sparks burst from the truck's armor, screams followed. She hit the dirt, rolling under the axle, pulling Davis with her. His young face streaked with soot, his chest heaving. Stay low, she hissed. He nodded, wide-eyed, clutching his rifle like it might vanish if he loosened his grip. The world narrowed, shouts, orders, blood already pooling in the mud. The convoy staggered like a wounded animal, trucks boxed in, ridged lines vomiting fire. But in the chaos, something sharpened inside her. She knew this place. She studied the contours in silence while others dismissed her. Every rise, every shadow, every false gap that promised escape but led only to slaughter. She could feel her brother's voice again, faint but firm. You always see the paths no one else does. And now they needed that vision, whether they admitted it or not. She crawled forward, fingers tearing on gravel, ignoring the searing pain in her knee. Her eyes cut through smoke, tracing where the fire was thickest, where it was weakest. A flank, a blind spot. It wasn't much, but it was a chance. Her throat burned as she shouted over the chaos. Cover the left ridge, lay suppressing fire there now. For a split second, silence answered. No one moved. Soldiers crouched behind doors, peeking out with disbelief that a sergeant, she was daring to give direction. Then Davis fired first. His rifle cracked, the sound sharp and desperate. Another soldier followed, then another. Gunfire shifted, and the ridgeline faltered. Not broken, but shaken. She scrambled to the nearest officer, a captain huddled behind a shattered door. His helmet was gone, a cut bleeding down his forehead. His eyes darted everywhere but hers. "We can't stay boxed in," she snapped. "They'll collapse the valley on us. We have to move now." He spat blood, shaking his head. "The order is to hold position, wait for air support." Her jaw clenched. She wanted to scream, but she swallowed it. Air support won't matter if we're dead before they arrive. His gaze wavered, then shifted away. "You're not in command, Sergeant." The words hit harder than the blast had. Not in command, not trusted, not heard. Even when the valley itself was proving her right. She stepped back, chest burning. Another bullet ricocheted off the metal inches from her head. She pressed herself flat, breath ragged. She could let it go, stay silent, save herself. Or she could try again. Her fingers brushed the map against her chest, steadying her. No, she wouldn't let them die here. She turned, catching Davis's eyes. He was firing short bursts, trying to cover the left ridge like she'd said. His face was pale, but his trust was whole. She gave him a single nod. Then she began to crawl toward the front of the convoy. Bodies littered the mud. Some groaned, clutching wounds. Some were already still. The stench of burned fuel thickened with every passing second. She passed Private Alonzo, barely older than Davis, his arm shredded by shrapnel. He clutched a photo of a newborn in one trembling hand. His lips formed words she couldn't hear. She knelt, pressing her palm to his wound, whispering, "Stay with me. Breathe, just breathe." His eyes locked on hers, desperate, terrified. Then his chest lifted, steadied. She shoved a tourniquet into a medic's hands, forcing herself to move on before she broke apart. Because she couldn't stop, not now. At the lead truck, the major was shouting into a handset, his voice cracking with static. He slammed the radio down, face contorted in fury. "Air support's 20 minutes out," he barked. "We hold until then." 20 minutes is suicide," she snapped, words sharper than bullets. His head whipped toward her, eyes blazing. "Stay in your place, Sergeant." Her hand curled into a fist. Rain streaked through her lashes. She saw her brother's face again, the folded flag, the silence at the funeral. She'd sworn she would never let arrogance write another obituary. Her voice dropped, low but unshakable. "With respect, sir, you're about to kill us all." A ripple of silence followed. Even over the chaos, her words landed like steel. The major glared, but his lips trembled. For the first time she saw it, not certainty, not strength, fear. The kind that hides behind orders. She didn't wait for his permission. She thrust the map against his chest, jabbing a finger at the ridgeline. There, that gap. It's shallow, looks like a dead end, but it cuts into a draw that'll cover us from their fire. We push through it, we live. He stared. Rain plastered the map to his chest. His hand didn't move. Sir, she hissed, look. His jaw worked. Around them, bullets kept chewing metal. Another explosion rocked the ground. Finally, he tore his gaze away and shoved the map back. You're insane. Her heart sank. But then another voice cut in. Davis. If she's insane, then so am I, because I saw it too. Every head turned. The young soldier's voice wavered, but he didn't back down. She called the first explosion before it happened. If you don't believe her now, then you're not fit to lead. The words hung dangerous, reckless, but true. The major's face flushed. His lips curled, ready to bark another dismissal, until another blast ripped the ground not 50 meters away. The convoy shook, men screamed, and something in his eyes cracked. Move, he roared suddenly. Push through the gap, cover fire on the left. The soldiers surged to life. Engines roared, rifles thundered. She exhaled, the tightness in her chest loosening for the first time. Not relief, not yet. But a chance. The convoy lurched forward, tires spinning mud. Trucks groaned as they turned toward the shallow gap. She ran alongside, lungs burning, rifle clutched in her hands. Every step was chaos. Bullets hissed past her ears. Grenades pounded earth. Screams echoed behind. But forward was survival. She vaulted onto the truck bed, yanking Davis up beside her. His face was streaked with grime, but his eyes burned with something stronger now. Not just fear, trust. The ridge fire weakened as they angled into the gap, just as she'd seen. The draw shielded their advance, stone walls swallowing the enemy's line of sight. It wasn't safe, it wasn't clean. But it was life. For now. When the last truck barreled into the cover of the draw, the valley's roar dimmed behind them. Soldiers slumped, panting, eyes wide, some clutching wounds, some clutching nothing at all. She sat against the metal, chest heaving, map still pressed to her chest like scripture. The major stalked past, jaw tight, refusing to meet her eyes. He muttered orders into the radio, voice brittle. No acknowledgement, no gratitude. But she didn't need it. Because Davis's voice broke the silence, soft but fierce. You saved us. She shook her head. Rain dripped from her helmet, tracing her cheek. No, she whispered. I just refused to let us die. His gaze lingered, heavy with unspoken things. Respect, relief, something more human. But before she could breathe in that fragile moment, the major barked again. We're not out yet. Regroup. Air support's inbound, and God help anyone who questions my orders again. Her jaw clenched, she looked away. She'd spoken, she'd been right, and still dismissed. The ache inside her wasn't pride, it was heavier. Because she knew this wasn't over. Not the ambush, not the arrogance, not the silence. And somewhere, deep in the storm of her chest, a truth pulsed stronger than any order. She had seen something else on that map. Something no one else had noticed yet. And she hadn't told them. Not yet. The rain finally eased. Not gone, just lighter. Drizzling like a whisper over bent helmets, over torn canvas, over bodies wrapped hastily in ponchos. The draw was quiet compared to the valley, but not silent. Not ever. Radios crackled. Men groaned. A medic's voice rose in sharp commands, trying to keep fatting heartbeats from slipping into stillness. She stood apart, back against the cold stone wall, helmet tilted low, rifle balanced across her knees. Her fingers dug into the map pressed against her chest. Every breath felt like a weight she hadn't earned. The convoy was alive. They had escaped, but not all of them. She forced herself to look. Private Alon's gone. The photo of his newborn still clutched in his burned hand. Staff Sergeant Ramos silent under a tarp, eyes staring through fabric that couldn't close them. Others, scattered across the mud, their names already forming a list she would never forget. Her throat tightened. They had trusted orders. They had trusted the major. And when that trust failed, it had been her voice that broke the silence. But her voice had not saved everyone. And that truth cut deeper than the bullets. She turned her head, blinking rain from her lashes. The draw stretched ahead, narrow but winding, carved by rivers long dead. It offered cover but also a trap if they lingered too long. Davis sat a few feet away, wiping grime from his rifle with trembling hands. He wasn't shaking from cold. She could see it, the tremor of adrenaline, the ghost of near death still clawing at his skin. He caught her eyes, didn't smile, didn't speak, just nodded once. The kind of nod that carried more weight than words. She nodded back. And for a moment, the silence between them felt like survival itself. The major paced like a caged animal, voice sharp into the radio. We need extraction, immediate. Air supports inbound, but we're boxed. Confirm coordinates. Static answered him. He swore, slammed the handset against the truck. His gaze swept over the men, then brushed past her like she wasn't there. She almost pitied him, almost. Because she could see the cracks in his command. The way his shoulders sagged when he thought no one was watching. The way his eyes darted to the bodies before snapping away. He was afraid, and fear in a leader was contagious. She pressed the map flat against the wall, tracing the ridgelines with her thumb. There it was again, the path she had seen hours before, a pattern that didn't belong. It wasn't just an ambush point, it was deliberate, designed. Not just terrain, it was intelligence. Her stomach turned. Someone had known they'd take this route. Someone had guided them here. And no one else saw it. Not yet. She folded the map quickly, tucking it deep into her vest before the major noticed her stare. Because if she was right, trust itself had already been compromised. The medic, a wiry man named Callahan, dropped beside her, hands stained red, eyes hollow. He lit a cigarette with shaking fingers, ignoring the rain soaking the paper. "Hell of a day," he muttered. She glanced at him. His voice was flat, but his eyes screamed. "They always are," she said softly. He dragged on the smoke, coughed hard, then laughed bitterly. "Promised my kid I'd quit. Guess she'll forgive me if I make it home." His laugh broke, just for a second. Then he buried it, staring into the mist ahead. She didn't tell him it would be fine. She didn't promise survival. Empty words didn't belong here. Instead, she asked, "How old's your kid?" 7, he exhaled smoke. "Wrote me letters with crayons. Everyone ends the same, come home, daddy." Her chest ached. She thought of her brother again. The letters he'd left behind, folded in a box she couldn't bring herself to burn. "Then that's the mission," she whispered. Callahan looked at her, tired eyes searching hers. And in that look he understood, not orders, not maps, just survival one promise at a time. He flicked the cigarette away, ground it into the mud and stood. Her eyes lingered on the glowing ember until it died. Night crept fast in the draw. Shadows deepened, merging with smoke that still clung to the valley behind. The convoy huddled close, headlights dimmed, engines low. They were alive but exposed. She lay on her back, staring at the jagged edges of the cliffs above, listening to the rain tapping her helmet like fingers. Every drop echoed louder than it should have. Her eyes closed, but the darkness wasn't rest, it was memory. Her brother's voice again, not soft this time, angry. "You can't save them all." She jolted awake, breath ragged, hands clutching the map. Davis stirred nearby. "You okay?" She forced a nod. "Yeah." But her voice cracked. Because no, she wasn't okay. Not with the map burning in her chest, not with the truth gnawing at her ribs. Someone had set them up. And if she was right, The map wasn't just a tool for survival, it was evidence. Evidence no one else wanted to see. Not yet. Before dawn, orders came. The major gathered them in the narrow space between trucks, his voice low but sharp. Air support on standby. We're moving at first light to the extraction point. Stay tight, stay quiet. No one questioned him. They were too tired, too broken. But she saw it, the extraction point marked on the radio's map board. Too obvious, too clean. Her stomach turned cold. Another trap. She wanted to shout, to rip the map from her vest and lay it before them, to prove what she saw. But their eyes, their exhaustion, their need for orders, not doubt. They wouldn't listen. Not yet. Davis leaned close as the group broke apart. His whisper was shaky. You don't trust it, do you? She looked at him. His young face carried more weight now, carved by fire and loss. She shook her head. Then what do we do? Her fingers pressed against the folded map. We watch, she said softly, and when the moment comes, we act. His jaw tightened. He didn't ask more. But his silence told her he'd follow. And in that silence, she found the smallest shard of hope. The rain stopped before dawn. The air hung heavy still, like the earth itself was holding breath. Engines rumbled, boots shifted, weapons clicked. She climbed into the truck, map pressed against her ribs, eyes scanning the ridges. They rolled forward, slow, careful. The sky lightened from black to gray, painting the cliffs in ghostly hues. Every shadow felt alive. Every bend felt wrong. Her pulse quickened. And when the extraction point came into view, her breath froze. Too still. Too empty. Too perfect. She knew. She had been right again. And this time, the cost would be greater. Unless she found the courage to break silence once more. The extraction point was too quiet. No birds, no insects, no movement except the mist curling low over the flat ground. The trucks rolled to a halt, engines rumbling into uneasy silence. Soldiers shifted, weapons ready, eyes darting from ridge to ridge. She pressed her fingers into the folded map against her ribs. Her throat tightened. This wasn't safety, it was a stage. The major stood tall in the front, scanning with narrowed eyes. Hold position, he barked. Air supports inbound. But his voice didn't carry conviction. It carried desperation. She leaned forward, whispering to Davis beside her. Look, no cover, no concealment, it's a killing field. His young eyes flicked over the terrain. He swallowed hard. Then why stop? She didn't answer because she knew. It wasn't a mistake. It was planned. The map's lines swam in her memory. The ridges weren't random. They bent like arms around the clearing, curving inward, designed to funnel prey into one place. And they were standing right in the center. Her heart pounded. She opened her mouth. Then the first shot cracked. A soldier at the edge dropped, helmet rolling across the dirt. The silence shattered. Gunfire erupted from the ridges, raining down like thunder. The clearing became a cage. Soldiers dove for cover that didn't exist. Bullets tore through canvas, shattered windshields, ripped holes through steel. Screams mixed with the staccato rattle of return fire. She hit the ground, dragging Davis down with her, mud splashing across their faces. Stay low, she shouted, even as her hands shook. Her ears rang, her pulse roared. She crawled toward the truck wheel, pressing her back against it as metal sparked inches from her skull. The major screamed into the radio, "Where the hell is air support?" Static answered. She knew then they weren't coming. Her chest burned, her vision blurred, not from fear but fury. This wasn't just an ambush, it was betrayal. Someone had fed their roots, someone had guided them into this slaughter. She ripped the map from her vest, slamming it against the mud, tracing the lines with trembling fingers. The proof was there, The bends too precise, the roots too neat. Someone had drawn them here. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "You bastard." Davis crawled closer, eyes wide. What is it?" She looked at him, her voice low but sharp. This wasn't the enemy's terrain. This was designed. Someone inside mapped this. His face drained of color. "You mean someone set us up?" Her silence was answer enough. Let The firefight raged. Callahan the medic darted from body to body, shouting, dragging, bleeding himself but never stopping. His voice cracked with every cry of "Stay with me." Private Hendricks, barely 19, screamed for his mother as bullets chewed the dirt around him. A corporal pulled him back, holding him down with shaking hands. Everywhere she looked, faces human, fragile, breaking under the weight of betrayal. She pressed the map against Davis's chest, her voice fierce. "If I don't make it, you hold on to this. You take it back. You show them." He shook his head violently. "Don't you say that." "Promise me." Her eyes locked on his, unyielding. His lips parted, trembling. Then he nodded, slow but sure. "Promise." The major's voice cracked again, shouting over the chaos. "Hold position. Reinforcements are inbound." She snapped her head toward him, fury boiling. "Reinforcements aren't coming." He froze, eyes cutting to her like knives. She rose from the mud, chest heaving, voice breaking through the gunfire. "Look at the map. Look at where we are. This isn't extraction, it's execution." The soldiers around her faltered. Some turned their eyes. Some lowered their rifles mid-burst just for a heartbeat. She thrust the map high, rain plastering it to her fingers. "We're not victims, we're being led. Somebody on the inside is feeding them every step we take." The words hung heavy, even through the gunfire. The major's face twisted, pale with rage or fear. "That's treason, Sergeant," he roared. "Shut your damn mouth before I—" Another explosion cut him off, the blast hurling him against the truck. He slumped, unmoving. Silence followed, only for a second. Soldiers' eyes flicked between his body and hers. The chain of command had broken. And in the break, something shifted. They listened. Her chest rose, breath sharp. She jabbed the map toward the northern ridge, where fire was weaker, the enemy spread thin. That's our way out. It won't be easy. It won't be clean. But it's the only way they won't expect us to go." No one argued, not this time. Davis's voice rose, strong despite the fear. "You heard her. Cover fire, North Ridge, move." The soldiers surged, not with discipline, not with polished precision, but with raw survival. Gunfire shifted. Smoke thickened. Men and women who minutes before were breaking under betrayal now fought like fire itself. And for the first time, her voice wasn't drowned. It was followed. She ran with them, mud splashing her boots, bullets hissing past. Her knee burned, but she forced it forward, faster, harder. The map was clutched in her hand, edges tearing, rain bleeding the ink. Davis stumbled. She grabbed his vest, yanked him forward. Callahan dragged another soldier, teeth clenched, blood soaking his sleeve. They pushed inch by inch through chaos. The northern ridge loomed, closer, closer. Her lungs burned, her chest screamed, but her eyes stayed locked ahead. They would not die here. Not in someone else's betrayal. Not without truth. When the first boots hit the rise of the northern ridge, the gunfire slackened. The enemy hadn't expected it. Their line faltered, broke. Shouts erupted. Soldiers surged higher, pushing through stone and mud, fighting not just for breath but for meaning. She reached the crest, dropped behind a boulder, rifle snapping to her shoulder. She fired once, twice, 3 times, not perfect shots but enough to push the enemy back. Beside her, Davis yelled, his own rifle barking fire. Callahan dragged his wounded into the cover of rocks. The convoy, broken and bloodied, had climbed free of the killing field. For now, her chest heaved. She pressed the map against her knee, rain smearing the last clear lines. But the truth was burned into her memory. Someone had drawn them to die. And until she proved it, every life ahead was still at risk. She looked at the survivors, their faces pale, hollow, smeared with mud and fear. They stared back, not at the major, still unconscious in the dirt, but at her. Waiting. Listening. For the first time. And the weight of that crushed her almost as much as the betrayal itself. Because now, if she failed, if she misstepped, she wouldn't just carry her brother's memory. She'd carry theirs. Night fell again, heavy and merciless. They sheltered among the rocks, too few for watch rotations, too wounded to move far. The rain had stopped, but the cold bit deeper. She sat against the ridge, map spread once more on her lap, tracing lines faint under the mud and water. Her hands shook, her heart ached. Every face she had lost that day etched itself into her skin. But deeper still, one truth gnawed louder. This wasn't over. The betrayal ran deeper than one ambush, deeper than one valley. And until she uncovered who was feeding their steps to the enemy, no one would be safe. Not her unit. Not the base. Not the mission. Her lips trembled, whispering into the night. Not again. I won't let it happen again. The map rustled in her lap. And in that sound, she heard both a warning and a promise. The next move would cost her more than she was ready to give. But she would give it anyway. Because sometimes survival wasn't enough. Sometimes the truth was the only thing worth dying for. The ridge was quiet now. Too quiet. Smoke curled from the valley below, black streaks rising into a sky littered with stars. The clearing where they had almost died lay far behind them, but the screams and gunfire still echoed in their heads. She sat against the cold stone, her rifle across her knees, the ruined map spread in her lap. Ink had bled into mud-colored veins, but the patterns still whispered to her. The bends of the roads, the curves of the ridges, the way every path had converged on that open ground. It wasn't chance, it wasn't error. It was deliberate. The survivors sat scattered around her in a broken half-circle, rifles within arm's reach, eyes hollow, faces pale in the starlight. Davis crouched beside her, rubbing mud from his hands. He hadn't spoken in a while, but his eyes kept flicking between her and the others. Callahan was binding his arm with torn cloth, face tight with pain. The corporal, Ramirez, kept packing near the edge, rifle clutched like he expected the rocks themselves to turn hostile. Hendricks sat hunched, hands shaking, eyes staring at something no one else could see. They were alive, but alive wasn't enough. Not when betrayal was bleeding through their ranks. She traced the map again with her thumb, muttering under her breath. This isn't terrain, it's choreography. Someone drew every move. Davis's voice came low. You're saying it wasn't the enemy. Her throat tightened. She looked up, scanning faces, exhausted, suspicious, desperate. If the enemy planned it, she whispered, they would have hit us at every turn, not just the clearing. No, someone wanted us funneled, wanted us herded. Her gaze drifted to the major, unconscious against a rock, his uniform still streaked with blood and dirt. His chest rose and fell, shallow but steady. Every time she looked at him, something cold coiled in her stomach. Had he known, or was he a pawn like the rest? She didn't have proof, not yet, only instinct. And instinct wasn't enough to accuse an officer in front of broken, desperate soldiers who needed someone, anyone, to believe in. Not yet. But hours crawled by. The night pressed down like weight. No fires too dangerous. They ate cold rations in silence, chewing with jaws that barely moved. Every sound of shifting stone, every rustle of fabric, every cough felt louder than it should. Hendricks broke first. His voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. They knew we were coming, they knew. Ramirez stopped packing, head snapping toward him. What are you saying? Hendricks's eyes glistened in the starlight. I'm saying, somebody told them. The words dropped like stones in a still pond. The air tightened. Callahan froze with bandages in his hand. Davis stiffened beside her. Her pulse surged. She wanted to speak, to calm, to control the moment, but she held her tongue. Let it come. Let them say what they feared. Ramirez's jaw worked, his grip on his rifle tightening. Watch your mouth, kid. That's dangerous talk. Hendricks shook his head violently. It's not talk. How else did they know where we'd be? Every turn, every stop, it's like they were waiting. Silence pressed again, heavier. Then Callahan muttered, voice low, broken. He's not wrong. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat. There it was, the fracture. The accusations hung in the cold air, invisible but suffocating. Davis shifted closer to her, his voice tight in her ear. We can't let them turn on each other. We won't survive it. Her fingers clenched around the ruined map. He was right. One spark and the survivors would rip themselves apart. But silence would damn them too. She pushed to her feet, rifle dangling at her side, and stepped into the circle of starlight. Enough. The word cracked sharper than gunfire. Heads lifted, eyes burned into her. You're right, she said, voice steady though her stomach twisted. They knew, someone told them, that ambush wasn't luck. A ripple of mutters, suspicion in every direction. But she snapped, raising her voice, it wasn't anyone here. The silence hit again, harder. She held the map high, rain-streaked and torn. This wasn't drawn in the dirt by some farmer with a rifle. This was inside, fed to them before we even left the base. Ramirez's jaw slackened. Callahan's eyes widened. Hendricks swallowed, his breathing ragged. She took a step closer, her shadow stretching over them. If we start tearing each other apart, we'll finish the enemy's work for them. That's what they want. That's why they set us up. Her voice dropped lower, steady as steel. So listen to me. We keep moving, we survive. And when we get back, I'll prove it. I'll find who sold us out, and they'll pay for every damn name we lost. For a moment, only the wind answered. Then Davis stood too, his voice rising behind hers. She's right. We survive together, or we don't survive at all. The mutters faded, faces dropped. The tension didn't vanish, but it bent, softened, redirected. For now. Later, when the others finally drifted into restless sleep, Davis stayed at her side, his back against the same rock. You handled that well, he murmured. Her chest felt heavy, hollow. I lied to them. His brow furrowed. How? Her fingers tightened around the map. I said it wasn't anyone here. She lifted her eyes, staring at the major still unconscious, his face pale in the faint starlight. But I don't know that, not yet. The admission burned her throat. Davis didn't answer, he didn't need to. The silence said enough. At dawn the major stirred, groaned, his eyes flickered open. The survivors tensed, fingers hovered near triggers. She rose, stepping closer, heart hammering. The major blinked, confusion giving way to recognition. Report, he rasped. No one moved, no one spoke. Her jaw set. She dropped to one knee beside him, map clenched in her hand. We were ambushed, she said coldly. Twice, both times exactly where the enemy wanted us. You tell me how they knew. His gaze flicked from her face to the map, then back. His lips parted, but no words came. Her breath caught. Was that guilt, fear, or just shock? Davis shifted behind her, rifle ready. Ramirez's voice broke the silence, harsh and raw. Well, answer her. The major's throat worked. He swallowed hard. Then finally he spoke. We've got a leak. The words spread like fire through dry grass. Her chest constricted. She leaned closer, whispering, her voice trembling with rage. Not a leak, a traitor. His eyes met hers, steady, cold. And in that look, something inside her twisted. Because maybe, just maybe, he knew exactly who it was. And maybe it was him. The sun never truly rose. It bled instead, weak light smearing across gray clouds, staining the jagged ridges in pale ash. Boots crunched against loose stone as they moved, single file, rifles angled at shadows that felt too close. Every sound seemed louder in the silence of that climb, the scrape of gear, the rattle of breath, the groan of weary joints. She walked near the rear, her eyes darting from the cliffs above to the backs of the men in front. The map pressed against her chest felt heavier than her pack. She'd barely slept. None of them had. Every blink had been ambushes replaying, betrayal whispering in her head. And the Major's words rasped in the dark. "We've got a leak." No proof, no answers, just a confession wrapped in shadow. Her jaw tightened as she scanned the ridgeline. The terrain was wrong again, too predictable, too perfect for eyes to watch them. She could feel it, the hand of design guiding them still. Someone wanted them here. Ramirez muttered under his breath as he marched, voice low but sharp. "Doesn't make sense. Why aren't they hitting us now?" Davis, a few steps ahead, answered without looking back. "Because they don't have to. We're doing it to ourselves." Ramirez's head snapped around, eyes narrowing. "What's that supposed to mean?" Davis didn't reply. The silence tightened again, thick as wire. She bit the inside of her cheek, forcing herself not to speak, not to fuel it. They were fraying fast. One wrong word, and the fracture would split them apart. They stopped at midday, huddled beneath a jutting overhang that gave shade but no comfort. Callahan dropped heavily to the ground, clutching his bandaged arm. Sweat streaked down his dirt-caked face. He fumbled for his canteen, but his hands trembled too much to unscrew the cap. She knelt beside him, steady fingers taking it, twisting it open, pressing it to his lips. He drank greedily, choking halfway. She steadied him, her hand on his shoulder. When he finished, his eyes flicked to hers, bloodshot raw. "Why are we still alive?" he muttered. The question chilled her. "What do you mean?" He coughed, spat blood, wiped his mouth. "They had us twice, could have finished it, but they didn't." Her chest tightened, the thought had haunted her too. Because ambushes didn't end half done. Enemies didn't leave survivors unless survivors were the point. She glanced at the others, Ramirez staring off into the rocks, Hendricks whispering to himself, lips trembling, Davis watching her with eyes that saw more than he should. And the Major slumped against his pack, silent, eyes closed. Her stomach twisted. Alive wasn't victory. Alive could be something worse. Alive could be bait. They moved again. By late afternoon, the wind picked up, slicing cold through their gear. Dust stung their eyes. The path narrowed, hugging the cliff's edge. One wrong step and gravity would do the enemy's work. She slowed near the rear, scanning every angle, every hollow. And that's when she saw it. A mark on the rock, small, deliberate, scratched into the stone like a signpost. Her chest froze. Not natural, not random. A trail. Left for someone to follow. Her hand shot out, grabbing Davis's arm. She pointed with her chin, subtle. He saw it too, his eyes widened, jaw tightening. "Who?" he whispered. Her lips pressed into a line. Not the enemy. The enemy didn't need signs on their own ground. Which meant someone in their group was marking the path. Her skin went cold. Her gaze flicked over the men. Ramirez restless, Hendricks shaking, Callahan pale with fever, the Major too weak or pretending. Every face was possible, every step was suspect. The noose was tightening, and someone among them was holding the rope. That night they camped in the shadow of a canyon wall, moonlight pooling pale across the ground. No one spoke. Every man sat apart, weapons within reach, eyes darting to one another like wolves circling wolves. She sat with Davis, the map open between them, the faint beam of her flashlight muted beneath cupped hands. She whispered, "They're guiding us. These markers, they're not enemy. They're ours. Someone's laying breadcrumbs." Davis clenched his jaw, staring at the faded lines of terrain. "Then we're walking right into the slaughter." Her throat tightened. "Unless we find out who." He studied her face in the dim light. "Do you think it's him?" His eyes flicked toward the major, lying against his pack, eyes closed again. She hesitated. Every instinct screamed yes, but instinct wasn't proof, and proof was the only weapon she had left. "I don't know," she whispered. But deep down, she feared the answer more than she feared the enemy. Near midnight, she woke to footsteps. Soft, careful. Her eyes snapped open, hand gripping her rifle. A figure moved near the edge of camp, crouched low, pausing every few steps to scratch something into stone. Her heart slammed. The traitor. She raised her rifle, breath held, finger tightening. The figure shifted, moonlight brushed across his face. Her chest constricted. Hendricks, the youngest, barely more than a boy, his eyes wide, frantic, muttering under his breath as he scratched. Her finger froze on the trigger. Not enemy, not betrayal, madness. He wasn't guiding anyone. He was lost in his own breaking mind, carving patterns into the earth like prayers. She lowered the rifle, throat tight, tears stinging her eyes. Because this war wasn't just killing them, it was hollowing them out piece by piece. And maybe that was worse. She sat awake until dawn, the map spread across her knees, watching the survivors stir one by one. Callahan coughing blood, Ramirez cleaning his rifle with shaking hands, Hendricks whispering still, fingers raw from carving meaningless signs. And the major, eyes open now, staring at her, unblinking, unreadable. Her heart clenched. Because maybe Hendricks was broken. But someone else was still marking the path. And soon, very soon, she would have to decide who she trusted. And who she would point her rifle at when the truth came out. The canyon walls swallowed sound. Every bootstep echoed back at them, hollow, wrong. The air tasted of stone and dust. Above, the sky was the color of steel, the sun hidden behind clouds that gave no warmth. She kept her rifle up, scanning every ridge. Her breath came slow, measured, the way it always did when the silence felt too heavy. Because silence was never safe. It was waiting. They moved in single file again, strung out like beads on a wire. Ramirez took point. Callahan staggered in the middle, pale, fever sweating through his bandages. Davis hovered near him, steadying his steps. Hendricks muttered to himself at the rear, words lost in the canyon wind. And the major, always in the middle, eyes shadowed, face unreadable. Her stomach twisted. Every time she looked at him, she felt the pull of gravity, like the truth itself was orbiting him, unseen but undeniable. But still no proof. Not yet. It came at dusk. The canyon widened suddenly into a bowl-shaped clearing, ringed by cliffs that climbed like jagged teeth. Her chest locked tight. Another kill box. She hissed under her breath, "Stop." But the first shot cracked before the word left her lips. The world exploded. Gunfire tore down from the ridges, bullets sparking against rock, ripping through dust and screams. The convoy scattered, diving for cover against the canyon walls. She threw herself behind a boulder, heart hammering, ears ringing. Not again, not again. She snapped her rifle up, eyes tracking the cliffs. Shadows flickered, rifles flashing in bursts. The enemy had them pinned. Davis slid in beside her, face streaked with dirt. "We can't stay here." "I know," she shouted back. But where? The canyon walls boxed them in. The only cover was the rocks already crumbling under fire. Her gaze snapped to the map, pulled halfway from her vest in the chaos. The path, the choke points, the markers scratched into stone. Her throat tightened. This wasn't coincidence. This was the end game. and someone here had walked them right into it. Ramirez returned fire, shouting curses between bursts. Callahan crawled behind a slab, clutching his bleeding arm tighter. Hendricks screamed wordless sounds as he emptied his magazine blindly toward the cliffs. The major huddled against the rock, radio in hand, voice sharp. "This is Alpha 2-1, we are under fire, Grid 9-7, requesting immediate support." Static. Then silence. The radio cut dead. Her blood ran cold. No signal, no help, no way out. Unless... Her eyes snapped to the major. His face was too calm, too steady. Not panic, acceptance. Like he knew this was coming. Her breath caught. It was him. It had been him all along. The realization ripped through her. Every breadcrumb, every choice of route, every delay. He wasn't just failing them, he was feeding them. She turned to Davis, voice raw. "It's him." Davis froze. "What?" "The major, he's the leak." Her words cracked like glass. "He's been guiding us into every ambush. Look at him," he knew. Davis's eyes snapped to the officer, then back to her. Doubt and fury warred across his face. Another volley of fire rained down, showering them with shards of stone. Ramirez yelled, "We're dead if we stay here." The major looked up then, meeting her eyes across the chaos. And in that look she saw it. Not guilt, not fear. Conviction. He believed in what he'd done. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't weakness, this wasn't panic. This was betrayal by choice. She raised her rifle. Her finger hovered on the trigger, chest heaving, heart slamming against bone. One pull and it would be over. But hesitation burned. Because killing him without proof would shatter what little held them together. The men needed clarity, not doubt. Her mind screamed, her body trembled. The map pressed against her ribs like fire. She had to decide. Now. Ramirez broke first. He turned, saw the major crouched useless with the dead radio, and rage twisted his face. "You knew," he roared. He leveled his rifle. "Wait," she shouted. Too late. The crack split the air, echoing through the canyon louder than enemy fire. The major jerked back, a bloom of red across his chest. His body collapsed against the rock, eyes wide, mouth open, but silent. Gunfire still thundered from above, but inside the clearing time froze. Every head snapped toward the fallen officer. And in that silence, the truth landed heavier than the bullet. The traitor was gone. But the trap he built still held them tight. Her body moved before thought. She grabbed Davis's arm, yanking him toward a narrow split in the canyon wall she'd seen marked faintly on the map. "There," she shouted, "cover the retreat, move now." Ramirez hesitated, torn between firing back and following. Callahan dragged himself up with a grunt, clutching his side. Hendricks stumbled after them, eyes wild. They moved as one, broken, desperate, bleeding, but moving. Gunfire tracked them, bullets hissing against stone, but the split narrowed, rocks shielding them from the worst. Every step was pain, every breath fire, but they pushed until the sound of rifles finally dimmed behind them. Until only silence followed. They collapsed in the shadow of the canyon, chests heaving, bodies trembling. Alive. But only just. The bodies they'd left behind weighed heavier than their packs. The image of the major's last look burned hotter than the bullet that killed him. Davis sat with his back against the rock, eyes wide, chest heaving. He was one of us, a major. How could he? Her throat burned, words wouldn't come. Because she didn't know why. All she knew was that betrayal cut deeper than enemy fire. Ramirez spat into the dirt, face hard, voice sharp. "Doesn't matter why, he's gone, good riddance." But the edge in his tone wasn't triumph, it was grief. Because even rage was easier than emptiness. She folded the ruined map, pressing it tight against her chest, as if to keep her own heart from breaking through. The ambush had stolen blood, the betrayal had stolen trust. And now all that was left was survival. But night fell slow, crawling over them like a blanket of iron. They built no fire, ate nothing, spoke little. Every man stared into the dark, waiting for footsteps that never came. She sat apart, rifle across her knees, the map tucked safe beneath her vest. Her mind replayed the Major's last look, calm, unrepentant. He hadn't begged, he hadn't explained. Because maybe, to him, there had been nothing to explain. Her chest ached. Betrayal was one wound. But never knowing why, that was the one that killed slower. She closed her eyes, breath trembling, hands tightening around the rifle. And in the silence of the canyon, she made herself a promise. She would carry the map home. She would speak for the dead. She would find the reason he had sold them out. And when she did, she would burn that reason to ash. No matter the cost. The canyon bled into desert. They walked in silence, boots dragging, dust clinging to their uniforms. The sun returned, burning overhead, but its warmth brought no comfort. It only exposed how hollow they had become. Every step was slower, every breath harder. But they kept moving. Because stopping meant dying, and they had buried enough already. By dawn of the second day, Callahan could no longer stand. His fever burned too hot, his skin gray beneath the sweat. He slumped against a rock, eyes half shut. "Go on," he whispered. "I'll only slow you down." "No," Davis said sharply, kneeling at his side. "We carry you." Callahan's cracked lips curved in a faint smile. "You won't make it if you do." Ramirez muttered under his breath, packing with restless fury. "We don't leave our own, we don't." But his voice cracked, breaking the rule he wanted to believe. She crouched beside Callahan, searching his gaze. He was right, they all knew it. Carrying him meant none of them would live. Her throat burned. She pressed her hand against his shoulder, steady, grounding. "We'll finish this, for you." Callahan nodded once slow, eyes closing. When his chest stilled, no one spoke. Ramirez turned his face away. Davis lowered his head. Hendricks just stared, lips trembling, words lost. They left a stone on his chest, the desert wind already swallowing his shape. And they kept moving. By nightfall, Hendricks cracked. The whispers that had haunted him since the convoy now spilled into the open. He muttered about shadows, about faces in the cliffs, about the Major watching from the rocks. When Davis tried to calm him, Hendricks shoved him back, eyes wild, rifle shaking. She stepped between them, hands raised. "Hendricks, look at me, it's just us, no one else." But his gaze slid past her, unfocused, trapped in a war only he could see. The shot came sudden, clumsy. It missed her by inches, sparking against stone. Ramirez lunged, tackling him, wrenching the rifle free. The struggle was brief, desperate, and then over. Hendricks lay still, chest unmoving, Ramirez's hand slick with blood. Silence dropped heavier than gunfire. Ramirez's face twisted, rage and sorrow colliding. "I didn't mean." No one blamed him. But no one forgave him either. They buried Hendricks shallow, stones piled quick, the desert wind already erasing him. 3 left. The desert stretched endless. They stumbled through dunes and dry riverbeds, lips cracked, water gone. The map grew softer with every fold, the ink smudged with sweat and blood. But she held it close, as if it alone could pull them forward. Ramirez cursed under his breath, words sharp as knives. Davis said nothing at all. And she, the last tether between them, kept her eyes fixed on the horizon. Because if she looked down, if she counted the dead, if she let herself stop, she would break. On the 4th morning, the ground changed. Dust gave way to gravel, gravel to broken road. Her chest seized. Concrete. the ghost of a highway, half buried but undeniable. She dropped to her knees, hand pressing the faded paint, tears burning hot and sudden. They were close. They had to be. "Base can't be far," Davis rasped, his voice cracked from silence. Ramirez staggered beside him, eyes hollow, rifle hanging loose at his side. One more push. That was all. The base rose from the heat like a mirage. At first just a smudge against the horizon, then walls, towers, the glint of antennas catching sunlight. Her heart pounded, too fragile to believe. But the shape grew clearer. Real. Alive. Safety. They broke into a run, or what passed for one with legs so heavy, lungs so ragged. Guards shouted from the wall, rifles raised, then lowered as recognition flared. The gates opened, and for the first time in weeks, they were no longer alone. Inside, the air smelled of metal and disinfectant. Voices buzzed, hands reached to steady them. Water touched her lips, sharp and cold. But she barely heard it. Her mind was already retreating inward, replaying every step, every scream, every betrayal. The Major's face, Callahan's fevered eyes, Hendrix's final cry. She had carried them all here. But carrying did not mean saving. Ramirez sat hunched on a cot, staring at nothing. Davis clutched his bandaged side, eyes glazed, whispering names under his breath. And she unrolled the map one last time. Its creases tore, blood smeared the ink. But the path was there, the proof. The record of every trap. She laid it flat on the table, before the officers who demanded answers. "This," she said, voice hoarse, "is how he led us to slaughter." They leaned in, eyes narrowing, whispers starting. But she didn't stay to hear judgment. Her duty was done. The truth was theirs now. Night in the barracks was too quiet. No whispers, no gunfire, no boots crunching gravel. Just silence. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the map still pressing against her chest, though it no longer rested there. Ramirez shifted restlessly across the room. Davis muttered in his sleep. She closed her eyes. The Major's last look still burned. Not fear, not regret. Conviction. She would never know why. But she knew what it had cost. And as long as she lived, she would carry that cost. Not as burden, but as promise. That betrayal would not be the last word. At dawn, she stood on the wall, staring out at the desert. The wind whispered across the sand, carrying nothing but emptiness. But in her chest she carried names. Callahan, Hendrix, the faceless dead of the convoy. And even the Major, because forgetting him would mean forgetting why the truth mattered. Her rifle hung at her side, her uniform clung ragged to her frame. But her eyes were steady. Because the path had ended here. But her war was not done. She would speak for the dead, she would guard the living. And when the next map was drawn, she would make damn sure no one else walked blindly into betrayal. The sun broke the horizon, spilling light across the desert. For the first time, it felt less like fire, and more like a promise,